KCAA, where every day is a great day.
Welcome to U-Turn Radio. Here at U-Turn Radio, we believe in big-hearted communities and small government. Join your hosts, Nadia Renner, Tom Murphy, and Eric Steinman, as we work to put local governments on a diet and champion the charities that support your community. So come on, join us and let's turn it around.
Welcome to U-Turn. Happy Sunday. Full studio today. Everybody's here live and direct. We have a great show today. This is our...
Yeah, we're like packed in like sardines here.
A little bit. I could feel the love. We're so close tight. We have a great show today. It's our last show of the year. So we're going to cover a little bit of what we've learned, what we've done. And just as a reminder, we are coming back next year, but we're not going to be on Sundays. We're going to be on live on Thursdays, every Thursday at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, which I'm really looking forward to that. It'll be interesting to see the difference in energy on a Thursday afternoon.
Absolutely.
As compared to a Sunday afternoon.
I'm pretty sure, and I'm so sure we're going to get more calls in, being that we're going to be on a Thursday. You can be part of our show and call in at 909-792-5222, and we can spin for charity here at U-Turn Radio. Absolutely,
and we're gonna keep doing that. And why are we so crowded today?
Well, today, since it's our last show, we have Doreen as our special guest today, again, in front of the camera. Usually she's behind camera. So today we have her back on. We're going to be sharing our experiences here at U-Turn. Eric is here live. Eric, we heard that you were stuck last week, like in a snowstorm or something like that. So we're so happy to see you back here in the studio.
Yep. Out by Dollywood in Tennessee.
Do we know what Dollywood is?
Like Dolly Parton, right?
Yeah, okay, good.
I don't know where Dollywood is, but I'm sure it has something to do with Dolly Parton.
Yeah.
I just was wondering if the generation behind ours knew who Dolly Parton was and knew that there was a Dollywood.
Yeah, they have a statue of her in Sevierville, which is right by where I was working.
Sevierville, like
Sevierville. Well, it's not. That's how they pronounce it back there.
Okay, gotcha.
And you driving through, and it's this way to this town, this way to this town. Big Dolly Parton statue, arrows.
Does it really look like her?
Well, I had to go see it because I wanted to, in honesty, see if it was anatomically correct.
That's something I would definitely do.
It wasn't.
It doesn't look like her.
Yeah, it looks like her face.
Okay.
A much younger Dolly Parton.
Okay.
So last week we had a great show, and we went over what we bought, meaning what propositions got passed and what we were going to end up paying for, really, right, Tom?
Yeah, and it in one election cycle, I think our rough, back of the napkin estimate was almost $1.3 billion for the Inland Empire that, we added to our own backs.
So you can catch all of those shows on uturnradio.com. And we also covered how difficult it is to get interviews from people in the city, which was kind of like a big deal for me. But we got that all done, and we're moving forward today. So being that Doreen and I are here, and this is our final show, we kind of want to go over a few questions to ask Eric and Tom, and then you guys are going to ask us questions today. And that's how we're going to wrap up our last show here this year. So the first question for you guys is, what sparked the idea to begin a radio show and talk about local politics?
Eric's got to answer that one. It was his idea.
Yeah, I don't remember that far. Tom and I are both old. We don't remember. I think it was because they were suing us, right? Or suing people around us because we're putting these propositions in to try and change the government for the better. And so in the absence of being able to communicate through the ballot and having people vote on things, that might improve things in our mind, we thought we'd at least take it public and say this is what the problem is, and there's just one way of trying to get it out there. I think that was it, but again,
you know, like Eric said, it's a little bit difficult to to remember, but I think that was the catalyst when they kind of put us in the legal penalty box. With
yeah, it was kind of like, let's go tell on them. You know?
Yeah, but there was a body of work out there that we wanted to address, and as you kind of look at kind of the market. You know, if you look at talk shows, it's usually they're whining about what's going on at the national level, right? Mm-hmm. There really aren't a lot of local. You know, let's address stuff here locally. What's happening here in San Bernardino County, Riverside County, the Inland Empire. So that's kind of the niche that I think we were targeting was, national stuff. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, we think that
opportunity.
I think
here.
our discussion was if you want to change things nationally, start locally.
Right.
And so this has been kind of an experiment to see how much we could accomplish on a local level, and this is just one way we're trying to do something about it. But there's others too. We're having a little success here and not so much other places. It's not.
But I mean,
it's a big rock we're pushing uphill.
True, I agree. But I mean, to get sued and to have this reaction, can we talk about the lawsuit or no?
Oh yeah, that goes on and on.
What lawsuit was it?
3 or 4 years. When I say we, there's some people that joined us, and we helped draft these propositions to change kind of the way people were doing government. What was our initial slate of 3 or 4, I think?
Well, the first one was it was a recycling, and kind of the 2012 one where it was like, hey, the county hired a CEO, they're doing all the work. Let's make the
they cut their meetings. They used to have to meet every week, and then they cut their meetings down to once every 2 weeks, and raise their pay basically. So in 2012. We were part of a group and that's where we got our name, Red Brennan Group. Red Brennan was one of our neighbors, and he, we put a proposition forward and through a lot of work got it passed by 64% of the people, but it never took effect because they put a deceptive proposition right on top of it. So always, that was something I always thought was something that should have happened. It was voted on by the people, so we're not the only ones that think that way, and never did. So we put it back on the ballot, and this time they didn't, which would require another 27,000 signatures, but this time they didn't let it go on. Instead of letting it go forward to signatures, they sued. And so we in turn did what, Tom?
Before we move on, I'd kind of like to address how that made the folks that signed that thing feel. I mean, you're a working guy or gal, and we talked to them, said, hey, are you interested in supporting us with this? They're like, yeah. And so they sign up, and then they get a letter from the county saying you have been sued. I mean, imagine that.
For just signing, for agreeing to saying, like, I agree with what you guys are trying to do, let me sign this.
They were the proponents. So you have to get a proponent to sign off on an initiative. They have to be a registered voter. And they read it, and they're like, yeah, we agree with this, so we'll sign on with it. And the point is they're deciding that they want to help to try to change things.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And putting an initiative on the ballot is a right, absolute right via the California law, and they exercise their due diligence as good citizens, and they get sued by the county. Wow. And it just that was the thing I think that really got me is like, these are folks that are just going around and trying to do their work.
And and a lot of it comes from people being too attached to the job that they're going to stay in there at all costs and whatnot. So if it's not this super highly compensated job, and they're doing it more as a public service than to create a career, and they don't have pensions that vest in 9 years, which creates a huge incentive for them to just stay in office, whatever it takes, sell out to whoever, stay in office for 9 years, then they get this big pension the rest of their life. So,
and he's addressing the supervisor position, elected supervisor position.
So then, you're everything that comes before you. You're looking through the lens of not only what's good for the county, but also what's good for you. I mean, this matters a lot to you and your family, and I don't, we don't think that necessarily results in the best decisions. And so it was a fair proposition to put forward. They're doing a part-time job. They've given all their powers to someone who has a full-time job where they're paying $500,000 plus, and but no cut in their pay. In fact, they raise their pay. So, let's look at this again and pay it like it's a part-time position.
So that was the first initiative.
I think we calculated they're getting paid like $1,200 an hour or something for their actual meeting time.
Yeah,
it might have been $12,000 an hour.
Wait, $1,200 an hour?
Something like that.
That's crazy.
If you take the amount of funds they make in pay and benefits and then divide by the number of hours that they are in their supervisor meetings.
And that's all that's required for them to attend these meetings. And then they say,
down.
Yeah, and they say that, we do much more than that, and we attend all these other things. But you know what? They get paid for all the other things, too. They go for a committee on the roads. They go for a committee on the airport, and they get money from that, too.
I mean,
and they don't have to do those.
Can't they have, like, another job where... I mean, is that possible? Can't you just work or maybe
Is it like only full time? Is that what you're saying?
Like just have another job. And then if this is part time, like there's so many people having 2 jobs. Like I remember when I was in school, I don't even know how I did it, but I had 2 jobs and I attended school. So my question is like, can they not have a regular job and do that as a part-time job?
I mean, that's our point. They should have a regular job, because how can you do things for people that have regular jobs unless you're out there sharing that,
Right.
You're seeing how hard it is and whatnot, and you're seeing what the problems are. So we think there's a much better supervisor who is a working supervisor and is just doing this part-time. And that's not it. Everything goes to the wind. They stop everything else. They just be a supervisor. And they're only really required to attend one meeting that averages about 2 hours every 2 weeks. In the county charter, which all the people voted in when they set up the county, says they're supposed to do it every week, but they unilaterally set aside the county charter and made it every 2 weeks. Then they also set aside the county charter and said, instead of the elected person, the chairman of the Board of Supervisors being the chief executive officer of the county, that we don't have that responsibility. We're going to give that to a new chief executive officer that we hired, which is another thing that we introduced a proposition on and said, look, you want to change it, then go to the voters and change it. Don't, it'd be like changing the Constitution. The county charter is, in essence, that for the county. So that's a little background.
So we did those initial 2, and they sued us, and then it was like, okay, and they sued us. They said they were too complicated or covered much ground. So we were like, okay, let's break them up. So we ended up doing, I think, 12 different initiatives, and they sued us for all of them, I think, except for 2.
Yeah.
So a total 10. So with this lawsuit, there's money involved in here. Like now you guys have to pay them.
It's only the only money involved is lawyers' fees. It's not like they sued us for we're suing you for $20 million or something like that. What they did was basically go to the judge and say, "Hey, judge, we recognize we have a ministerial duty," which basically means they don't have any choice. They're supposed to do it, but they went to the judge and said, "Judge, we don't think we should have to do this. We don't think we should have to do our job because we, county council, we believe these are unconstitutional."
I really think that's crazy because a lot of people won't do that, won't take that step to say, hey, let me submit this stuff. And then it creates some type of fear because if you guys did it and then you guys get sued and then the people that signed those papers, they get sued. I almost feel like, well, if I wanted to create some type of change, how would I do it without getting sued or it's kind of like a risk that you're taking.
Yeah, I mean, there's a self-correcting thing in there. If it's a really whack job, proposition, it self-corrects because you got to get 27,000 people to sign this thing. which means you got to shake down 27,000 people in a parking lot somewhere.
Yeah.
And what's your chances of getting fellow whack jobs for 20? You're not going to find them. It self-corrects. So that's why the law says it's a ministerial duty. When one of these come by, the duty of the county council is to write up a summary of it that goes before the people, and then you go show it to people to get signatures. But they chose to not do their duty as the law requires and say, we're deciding as county council, which is really somebody behind the scenes saying, this doesn't look good for us. I imagine some supervisors had a crack at it, but we won't know that until further into the lawsuit.
So these are still going on, like all of these.
Oh, any lawsuit, the over and under is about 5 to 6 years. So they can put everything on ice for at least 5 to 6 years.
It buys them a lot of time to figure out how else to.
It's a whole nother group of supervisors. It's somebody else's problem. They've moved on to another job.
Wow, that's pretty deep.
Now, does this affect people like with your job, or if you want to open a business? Does this affect like on that type of level? Like, let's just say if I get involved and I'm saying like, I signed the paper, I want change, but I also want to open a business, for example. Does that affect like what you're trying to do as well as like in a business side? If you get involved in politics and say, hey, I don't agree with this. Like, for example, we had Bob Cable from Cable Airport, and one thing that I got out of that interview, I was like, how much does it affect him as his business, and how much like can he do before they prevent him? But something that we learned from that interview is that he owns the land, so they can't really like try to get him with different fees and that type of stuff.
That doesn't. I mean, they can enforce what they're already doing to a greater degree on you than others, but I don't know that we've necessarily. That takes work to do, to single people out and go after them. I mean, I don't know that we've necessarily come across that type of situation.
Right. Yeah.
Theoretically it does. I mean, you're trying to push something that we don't like, and we'll get even with you by not approving your stuff. For that reason, I wouldn't think about doing a whole lot of work in San Bernardino County doing what we're doing, because I imagine it wouldn't be the easiest path. But you know what? It isn't the easiest path already, and that's why we're doing it. It's they're getting in the way of progress and letting people do new things, different things, and trying to make things better. And they're trying to oversee all that and put their you can only do what we say you can do, and they're not innovators, and that's going to put us further behind.
So you have this experience, and you get angry enough to come up with this radio show to take it to the people, right? And so now you have a whole radio show. What were you thinking when you had the first show? I've heard some things about the first show. I wasn't there. I didn't come till show 7, but like you're finally here. You have the first show. Like, what's going through your mind?
Well, so before the first show, Tom and I looked at each other and said, we need some help on this because we are not the most radio face forward. So I remember, again, I don't remember all that much, but all I remember from the first show is that, we had Nadia on board, and I thought she presented well, and it was like, okay, that might work, and she had a good radio voice, and I don't even remember what was the first show, Tom.
The first show was basically why are we doing this, and we had a couple. We had one gentleman call in that we kind of leveraged for the next show.
Oh yeah, and he said, what you guys are doing is needed. I know those guys are pulling it dirty.
Mike was his name, I think.
Yeah. So that's kind of
that was pretty good. It was pretty good because somebody actually called in and said, I know what you guys are doing and why. So that was encouraging, and that somebody got it. Yeah. And maybe when we're on Thursdays, there'll be a lot more of that interaction. I think we were trying to draw a tough crowd here on and then 2 to 3.
We're looking for those folks, driving home stuck in traffic, and they can dial in, comment on the show, and we'll spin the wheel for them.
Already riled up from traffic.
Yeah,
They're ready to fight for my voice.
Let's truly go after the county. I just remember our first show and Eric saying, well, here's the first show. I don't know what we're doing, but let's go for it. And I was just like, oh, isn't this your guys' idea, though? That's the only thing I remember from our first show. And then Mike, our caller, and I was like, oh, so there is an issue here. Like, I think we are onto something.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's what I remember from our first show for sure.
Yeah. It was fun. It's been a great learning experience. I didn't particularly think talking in front of a microphone would be necessarily something I could do, but you figure it out.
You know what I think it's done is forced us to, if in putting together weekly shows, to drill down on certain issues and get them organized, and then try and look at all the different angles about them and get some people to talk about that. So we now have a history of stuff that we've considered, and our positions are on record and that type of thing. So that allows us to go forward where people can look into where we're really at on things and that type of deal.
Right.
The other thing I think it does for us that I appreciate, in general, the role of the press is to, keep government accountable, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, and to a certain extent, we're kind of press-ish, I guess, a talk show. And particularly because, like I said earlier, there are a lot of people speaking to this local space in terms of, on radio, on media, what's going on. There are news reporters doing that, but I don't see a whole lot of media doing that radio.
Yeah, and everyone's so distrustful about everything they
yeah.
got right now. It's, it's just going to take a while to build any trust in anybody on any kind of show you're putting on.
Yeah.
And we've definitely covered a lot of different topics here on U-Turn. We talked about the building department, getting permits. We covered FP5. We've covered a lot of different things. This is our 30th show, going from the first show to now number 33 today. What, in your guys' opinion, has been the best show that we've had, and why?
Instead of the best, I'm gonna address the one that I enjoyed doing the most.
Okay.
And it was the one about conflicts of interest and the colonies case. It was just fun because I got to kind of dig into the history of San Bernardino County and where the whole case came from, and kind of, that thing's been going on for 22, 23, something like that.
Yeah, and they're back to the well again. So.
Oh yeah, but so that for me it was fun just to dig into that.
Yeah. What about for you, Eric?
I think the one where we had the charity that we support out in Palmdale.
Valley Oasis?
Yeah, when they came in and they talked about some of the, I think it illustrated a couple of things that, when the government gets involved, it's usually not a good thing. I mean, just the whole concept of you're trying to address homelessness, and the more you address it, the more your budget gets cut.
Yeah, that was amazing to me
that.
because
let's get these people back on the streets on February 6th or whatever that count date is.
It's the last week of January. LA County, I think it's like 21st, 22nd, 23rd. They go count the homeless.
Yeah.
And if they go to Palmdale this year and there are fewer on the streets than last year in this survey,
they'll give them less money.
They get less money.
Yeah.
It was like, and I suppose it's good if you're trying to work yourself out of a job on that topic, but it just, like Eric said, it makes no sense.
Yeah, it's just, to take the coldest time of year and count people on the street, and that's what your budget's based on. Yeah. That creates a total incentive to have people on the street in the coldest time of year.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So I just, it's just another example of people not thinking all the way through, just a little bit, and
or maybe they are, and we should be really skeptical of the conclusions they're coming to.
Yeah. I don't think in California I wouldn't. I think there's people well intended on stuff like that, but they just don't realize that that maybe that's better left to other people to handle.
I do like what Duran just said though, because that would be kind of one of my hopes for the show, is that listeners become skeptical. Now, remember I said skeptical, not cynical.
Yeah.
But skeptical of the message that they hear from local authorities. Not cynical, but skeptical, and look into it and see, is this really true?
Yeah.
Like FP5, we had a message coming from local authorities, and we looked into it, and it was like, yeah.
I don't know if I'm buying
It was
it.
a little different.
Yeah,
It was definitely different, right?
Yeah.
Well, on that thing with the homeless people, it was really clear from the person we had on the show that she had been dealing with this for a long time, and she had her own thoughts on it. And it wasn't this housing first model that she thought made the most sense. She thought that it's important to get people to change some of their behaviors before you put them in a house to perpetuate them. And to me, it just illustrated that a lot of that stuff is just best left alone. If the government wants to help, maybe they're just lobbing some money over to the people who are already doing it, but not trying to jump in there and control it and we'll give you a little money if this happens or that happens. As soon as they start trying to make decisions and stuff like that, they can destroy business, they can destroy good works. I mean, there's no end to what the government can screw up, and it always ends up in a program that's perpetuated over a long time and costs people a whole lot of money.
If I'm not mistaken, her name's Carol, and she's been working there for over 22 years. And that's when you know that she knows what she's talking about, because she's doing it hands-on. And I think when government tries to get involved, it's like they have an idea of what it should be instead of people that are working there that see what it is.
Exactly.
And that's why they can provide or create a certain program. I think they should have more of an input of things like that, or rules and regulations, rather than the government, because they're the ones seeing that stuff in and out.
Because the community can address the needs better than someone, like sitting in Washington somewhere who has zero connection, to the people, or has never seen it. If you've never counted the homeless in January, I guess, maybe you won't really understand what it's like to serve them or what they need on a day-to-day basis, or what kind of money they need, or what kind of regulations, to set forth.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you got a program, you're going to try and keep them off the streets at the coldest time of year, for sure. And then you're going to bend the rules maybe in the warmer times and say, look, you're not going to have housing in the warmer times. So it's just contra to anything that would make any sense, But that's just what I find in government all over the country, from one side to the other, working is, they not capable of understanding everything because they don't really live and work and play amongst everybody who's dealing with that. And
the other thing about that interview was it was, to me, it was kind of an example of how government involvement kind of sucks energy, because Carol, right? She was kind of circumspect when she talked about government, but you could just tell when she talked about her own board, it was like she was excited because these people were working with her and let her try new experiments and things. And then she'd talk about the government and how involved, and it was energy, happy.
Yeah. And we can talk about that after the show.
Dread. She may have said those very words.
Yeah.
So speaking of charities, I know you just said that was your favorite show, but what was your favorite charity, Tom?
The most recent one, and I may get the title wrong, but Family and Friends of Murder Victims.
Right, yeah.
The reason why that was my most favorite one is because it's an example of what I think that, our tagline to the show is big-hearted communities and small government. If your child or your wife or somebody like that is murdered, there's no government program that's going to help you. It's going to be your neighbor. It's going to be, the person you go to church with, the person you work with. And the fact that there's a charity that's designed to do something like that I thought was great, because it's a big-hearted community thing rather than a government program to go help those folks. So that was kind of my favorite, just because of that principle.
Right. That's true. A good one, too, that we had, and it was actually recent, too, was the boxing with the police department.
Yeah.
I thought that was such a great
Cops for
program. Or Cops for Kids.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Yeah, Cops for Kids. And the kids get to play against the cops, and it builds this whole relationship rather than being introduced to a cop in a certain situation or in a relationship where it's like they did something bad, here's a cop. Rather than having something like this where they're playing a sport, they're building this relationship with each other. And at that point, I think like that's also a good way to have somebody to look up to, you know, that's doing something when it's kids that probably don't have a father figure at home. So now we're going to go into commercial break. And then we're going to switch the roles. We're going to have Eric and Tom ask Doreen and myself questions that they have for us. So this is our last U-Turn radio show for the year. We come back next year on Thursday at 3 o'clock.
We'll be right back to U-Turn after this commercial break. Don't go away.
Support the San Bernardino City Mission. Your donations help feed the hungry, provide used clothing for low-income families, provide access to housing and rehabilitation for the homeless, and help all who come to them for help. The mission provides a personalized assistance program for homeless men and homeless women and children. They help get less fortunate off the streets, place them in safe shelters, and get them back on their feet. Last month, the community helped provide over 7,400 meals and provided nearly 2,000 pieces of clothing, as well as almost 180 hygiene kits, which were provided for the needy. San Bernardino City Mission goes above and beyond, though, providing personal counsel, prayer, and a devotion time to encourage those in need in their spiritual life. So listen up, everyone. For a donation of just $1.57, you can feed a hungry person right here in San Bernardino. $15.70 will feed 10 people, and $157 will feed 100 hurting men, women, and children. If you're interested in helping and want to know more additional information, you can go to sanbernardinocitymission.org or call 909-649-0011. 909-649-0011. The San Bernardino City Mission, feeding the hungry, helping the homeless. That number again, 909-649-0011. Or visit them online, sanbernardinocitymission.org. The House of Ruth has been providing life-saving domestic violence services since 1977. Participation in House of Ruth programming is open to all battered women, men, and children. Domestic violence is a public health issue. 1 in 4 women are abused by their partner, and it's 1 in 7 for men. Even 1 in 3 teens are exposed to dating violence in their relationships. If you or someone you know needs help or support, House of Ruth can help. Call the House of Ruth 24-hour crisis hotline, 877-988-5559, or visit their website, houseofruthinc.org. The Humane Society of San Bernardino Valley, protecting animals for more than 4 decades. The Humane Society's mission is to prevent cruelty and neglect to animals and to provide for the health and well-being of animals with an emphasis on spay or neuter programs to prevent pet overpopulation. Visit the Humane Society of San Bernardino Valley for your pet's medical needs, 909-386-1400, or visit hssbv.org. The Humane Society of San Bernardino Valley, a leading nonprofit organization in caring for all animals in need.
How would you feel if you had to make a choice between buying food or spending your fixed income on life-saving medicine? No one should make that trade-off, but many low-income seniors are forced into difficult decisions like this every day. Smiles for Seniors Foundation provides energy assistance and safety net services to struggling low-income seniors in the Inland Empire. They provide one-time assistance to seniors to meet specific financial needs. They've helped with food, housing, utility payments, minor home and auto repairs, along with life-saving prescriptions or medical equipment. A nonprofit foundation funded entirely by donations from local organizations. Smiles for Seniors receives no funding from the state or federal government. They are funded by local businesses and individuals like you with big hearts and willing wallets. You can find more information or to donate to Smile for Seniors at 909-790-6671. That's 909-790-6671, or visit smilesforseniorsfoundation.org. That's smilesforseniorsfoundation.org.
For more U-Turn Radio, go visit our website at uturnradio.com. That's uturnradio.com. And follow us on Instagram and Twitter at uturn_radio. That's at uturn_radio. or follow us on Facebook at U-Turn Radio.
Tom, Nadia, and Eric are back with more only on the U-Turn Radio Show right here on KCAA.
Welcome back to U-Turn Radio, our last show of the year. This is our 30th show. 33rd, I'm sorry, 33rd.
Yep.
And then we're going to be back every Thursday starting January 3rd at 3 o'clock here on KCAA. So we're excited. We just went over questions that we had for Eric and Tom, how the show started, what their favorite show was, their favorite charity, and now we're flipping the roles here. You guys get to ask Taryn and myself
I'm scared.
questions.
Already.
So here we go. Look alive, Taryn.
Okay, my first question is, just from the beginning to now, how has your kind of view of local issues, local politics, how's it changed?
I got more trust issues than I had before in my life.
I think I will probably make a T-shirt for you that says that, Nadia. I feel like we need that moving forward because I see your trust issues.
Yeah, right?
I see them building. I think for me, I didn't realize how much was going on. Like, I didn't realize how much there was to talk about on a local level, just because, like you said, there is so much big government talk, national news, and you rarely hear about the stories in your own backyard. Or even like an analysis of them, really. And the paper only covers so much, and you only get so much analysis from the paper. You get, like maybe that journalist, or if it's skewed in one direction or another opinion-wise, then you sort of know what you're getting as soon as you start reading. I think I appreciate knowing what's in the community by way of like big-hearted community endeavors, charities and things, and also just knowing how much is going on that I should be aware of that, could be beneficial for generations to come.
Right, yeah.
I also think like every show that we've had, there's at least one message that I usually take away and then that I share, because it's just like, oh man, I didn't know that this was happening. And then I think that doing that and taking one message and sharing it with other people, I think that's usually how you start creating change. Because even like when I share that with my friends or my family, they're like, oh, I didn't know. Like, and I think there's a lot of that I don't know part that I started to learn more of here that I probably would have never learned somewhere else, because like Duran said, it's not being covered in newspapers. There's your local TV station's not going to talk about none of the stuff that I think we've covered. So I think that's more important, because even as a younger generation, you think, well, it doesn't matter, or it's probably not going to affect you until you become like an adult, when you start. And it's like, no, you're actually, if you start making some type of change now or getting involved now, you have a better chance at your future and not getting tax and fees and different things that we're dealing with are being in debt, and we're going to end up paying for that. So I think like every show has definitely, for me, I've taken something with me where I share, because I didn't know, so I wonder that people also didn't know. And I think like just that and sharing that across the board since I started working here has definitely been like an impact on every week here, every Sunday.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I'm old enough to pre-internet. I was live pre-internet. And before the internet, you had, basically you brought in one national paper, so you might, if you lived in the area, you'd read the LA Times. And then you'd maybe also take the local paper. And in my case, it was the Whittier Daily News, I think it was. And I love the internet. But one of the things that has come with it is that kind of middle, small local paper has been almost wiped out.
Yeah.
And so the journalists that are in that space, they're trying, but they have a much larger area that they have to cover. They kind of have to just take whatever local government is telling them and then turn that into their article.
I think that guy Mark at the Sentinel does a great job.
Totally different.
But remember when we had him on the show and he said that the government was pulling all of their property ads from him because they didn't like something he did.
Right. Yeah.
That was, I don't know how that can happen.
Yeah,
which people get away with it. It's just
everybody read the San Bernardino County Sentinel.
Yeah.
It's a one-stop shop. Mark is, he's a chief editor, writer. He does everything.
If there's
for
anybody that knows a lot, you guys got it going
He
on.
definitely knows a lot.
I started looking at the newspaper actually more now. I didn't know much about it prior to this show, but I think that was my second show that he was on, and I was like,
okay.
Oh, he's here, And then when I read through the paper, I also saw that like U-Turn Radio is like being advertised in there, so it's a little cross marketing. Really nice.
So the idea is, look, if we go and there's things that to me are bad and going to get worse, I think that there's stuff that's hard. Who's going to be able to do anything about it? And so you got to think, what can I do about it? Well, we can go get some ballot propositions and put it before the people. Well, that didn't work so well. So now we can go talk to people about these and see if we can get some people involved. And we've done that over the course of a number of shows here. But, Doreen and Nadia, you've been here from the beginning. So if we're not making an impact on you, then I don't think we have to select the things that, strike a chord with the people that, we're trying to get to, and especially with the younger people that, are going to have to live with the consequences in my mind. That's, I don't think that there's a huge problem in what's going on as it affects me personally. I do think there's a huge problem going on as it affects my children and people in the future. So I think it's really important to see what strikes a chord with you guys, for instance, because you've been here and heard it all, and see what So if we start with kind of those principles that we've talked about in supporting people for office in the county, having them not saying we'll support you or you because you think like us, but we'll support you as long as you will take these, which we think are pretty standard, middle of the line, principles that would be helpful. Let's go through those one by one and see what Nadia and Doreen, your thoughts are on, for instance, the first one being this conflict of interest situation. You've heard about it, and what do you see as a problem or not a problem, if you see anything at all on conflict of interest that face the people making calling the shots for the county, so to speak?
I'd like to read it off first, just so that we all have an understanding of
right,
like
for
what
listeners
Principle
that
1
don't
is.
know.
What we're talking about, yeah.
So Principle 1, an elected official shall recuse themselves from matters with an actual or perceived conflict of interest. So you're asking, how well does that connect with me, or what do I think about the principle in general?
Yeah, do you think that people actually abiding by that would make a positive change, and why?
Give me an example of what it would look like for someone to have to recuse themselves, because we've talked about perceived conflict of interest also being a problem as well. If it even looks like it's a conflict of interest, you should also recuse yourself.
Yeah, so here's the number one example. There's a building developer, and he wants to get a building development in, and he wants to shortcut all the stuff that somebody put in a house going in is doing, or maybe there's some problems in his developments. He wants those to be overlooked, so he's donating. But then he comes and he goes through the process of applying for a development permit for his housing development, and it goes through the different levels, and it comes to a vote before the county board of supervisors, and he has donated large amounts to the campaigns of those supervisors. If you're living by avoiding even the appearance of a conflict of interest in your county supervisor, you're going to say, I've taken a campaign contribution from this developer, I cannot vote on this, and you're going to recuse yourself from that meeting.
Yeah, I think that's pretty honest, and I think it's
that's
pretty
what
basic.
Yeah, and another thing is the employee unions.
Okay.
They give big money to the people that are running for office. And then, those people have to vote on the compensation, benefits, hours and stuff for the employee unions. Yeah.
So basically just making sure that, like, if you're receiving money, it doesn't look like you're receiving a bribe. Like, it's okay to, like, give me money if I'm running for something, but
know that once you do that, I can't help you.
Well, then how else are you supposed to get the money, though?
That's the thing. There needs to be people that are willing to contribute to people running for office. And that's why we have a problem in my mind. There needs to be people who are willing to contribute to people running for office because they just want a better form of government going forward.
Where are those people, Eric?
Well, those people, if you avoid, in my mind, people can't take money from anybody and then help them out necessarily. They can, maybe in some subtle ways, but they can't overtly help them out. Mm-hmm. Do anything that would make it look like they're acting on a conflict of interest. Then the amount of money that you need to run for office is no longer $2 million. It's maybe $300,000. And there are people that are doing it. There's people that know you from your interactions. There's, you've worked hard for some people in some form of government or in some civic thing or whatnot, and they're going to jump in and give you some money to run and whatnot. And that's material there. But as soon as you let the employee union come in for $700,000 and the property developer come in for $500,000, then I don't think you're going to find those people who are willing to come in with $1 million on their own just because they want good government.
Yeah.
That's asking a lot, and that's why I think that's needed. But I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I mean, I think it's needed, so I find it really interesting. I do think that it's needed, right? It sounds really, like, beautiful that someone would just donate to a campaign just to donate, and there would be, like, zero conflict or low conflict of interest. It sounds like great. But it sounds to me like the person with a $300,000 campaign won't be able to compete next to the person who gets, like, the $2 million, and is basically taking bribes, because I think at that point you're probably kind of taking bribes if you're taking so much money. While I agree with the principle, I'm like, there needs to be something creative in the interim to help people who really do just want to run for better government, and allowing, I guess, corporations or organizations to donate to those people, like, more in a more even keel way. I just don't know what that is.
So the principle is good.
The principle is good.
Show me the details.
Yeah, I have no clue what that would look like. Yeah.
But you know what? That kind of goes more for the supervisor. Like, let's just say if I were to run for supervisor and everybody gives me money, I would almost say, like, hey, if you're donating money, it's not guaranteed that I could do anything for you.
Right.
Just because I feel like I cannot owe people favors. Like, I usually don't like to work that way. Like, I owe you favors. So to me, it takes more of the supervisor, like that person that's sitting there, to say, hey, you guys can donate all you want, but there's no guaranteed in me doing this. And when there's that transparency and when there's that honesty in saying, like, if you support me, it's because you support what I'm going to do, then I would feel a lot more better moving that way, because that means that I'm going to be able to make the change that I feel that is needed, rather than, oh, I need to make change because so-and-so gave me this amount of money and now I have to go with what they're telling me. So in a sense, you're not being a leader. Like, then you shouldn't be in that position as a supervisor, because when I see supervisors, when I see people in these certain positions, I feel that you should be a leader. You should be able to say, well, thank you for your money, but I'm still going to do this because this is working out for the community, for the business, for this, for that, whatever it is that you stand for.
For all those people who are working and can't make any donations, it shouldn't be pay to play. It's those are people who need to be represented, and if you don't change things, they won't. So right now it's the money talks, and whatever is going to keep that supervisor in their position for 9 years till they get this huge lifetime pension is what they're going to do. And that it's just like you'd said, where's that money? What's the practical thing? When you need to get that money in to run and get reelected. And we hope to do some change on that. And we've talked about that, and we got some stuff on that. So I'm encouraged that you at least understand there's a problem there, because a lot of it is, now we've given you this thing, and if you don't, we're going to give it to somebody else to run against you, this money. And you're sitting there with, well, well, I can do a little bit of good, even if you're trying to be honest with that. You're going to say, I can do a little bit of good here, and if I don't take this money and play ball with these big donors, I'm not going to be in this position. I won't be able to help anybody, and that's probably the way a lot of people justify that are supervisors.
But also, if you're a supervisor, let's say, because you get elected by votes, right? So if you're a supervisor and you try to make more of an impact on the people to get them to go and vote for you, wouldn't that be maybe like a solution to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to start making an impact. If I want to, let's just say, if I want to run for supervisor, I'm going to start making an impact in my community so people can already know my name. You get your name out there because they get elected, right? So wouldn't it be more, I guess, I don't know, like another solution would be like, let me get involved with my community so I can have these people really support what I'm doing because I'm already doing it.
Rather than
just, right. And getting money, like, would that work in some way?
Yeah, I mean, we saw Jeff Hewitt get elected with, half the money that, the employee unions went up against him big, and he still got elected. But he had a whole lot of people out knocking on doors and campaigning in the community. He spent his money better in campaigning, I think, than his opponent probably did. And we'll try and get him on next year and talk about some of those ways. But in general, what we've talked about doing is just offering to support, going through some type of process, and we haven't come to the conclusion on how we do it, is if people adopt these principles, which we think will result in better government, then we'll put them into a process where we let people look at them and decide who they would like just from the things they've done and will do, without the pressure of a campaign and throwing your own hat into the ring. People saying, hey, I think that person would be great. Well, we're going to try and go talk to people like that and say, will you run for office and will you adapt these? And then if they do, and we come through something and say, this is maybe the best person out of those to run for the office, then we'll give them money irrespective of how they feel on, this issue or that issue, as long as they're saying we're basically going to go in there and we're going to work for the people, because over time, if you got people doing that, you won't have some of these problems that are going to affect people in the future, like these huge spending more than you need. People will make a decision saying, I'm in here for a while, and this is the way it should be. We want to make sure that the next generation has it as well as us, and those are the type of things we want to see represented.
Which, speaking of spending, we could probably do one more principle. So what do you guys think of Principle 2, which is basically public debt is a threat to the freedom of successor generations? So we're not really talking about right now, but our kids and grandkids. It's immoral to impose debt on persons that aren't born yet or they're unable to vote. And because of that, governments should adhere to a pay-as-you-go approach. So basically, you shouldn't borrow to do government business. What do you guys think of that?
I 100% agree with pay-as-you-go. I think even we went to Lake Arrowhead and they adapted that as well, pay-as-you-go. And I think this is so fair because if you really think about it, as a family, I don't think any parent would want to leave their kid a huge debt and say, okay, well, now I'm on. You got to take care of it. I think that is so unfair. I think, I know that my parents are always trying to do things so they can set us up for better things. And I think that if we apply this to that same concept of, let's set the future up for better things and not leave them in debt, I think this is definitely one that I'm yes, 100% for sure.
Yeah. And you would almost think that it would have a trickle-down effect, right? If we are future-minded and we raise, the next generation to be future-minded and so on and so forth, then yes, you would think that it would have, a long-lasting effect on the community and on future generations, so that you're not as worried about debt moving forward. It's almost I like the parent-child relationship you kind of introduced, because it's if I have a child and then I get a bunch of credit cards in their name and I max it out and I'm I won't be here to deal with that mess.
Yeah,
they'll have to deal with that later. It sounds nuts.
That's a great word. That's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah. It sounds nuts when you think about it that way, but with government, we tend to not think about it like that simplistically.
You know, I think people just really trust government. Like, they're like, oh, that's okay, sure, that sounds like we're going to do. I think that's what's happening. And I think that back to what U-Turn has taught me, it's like, wait, no, not only because they're authority or government. And it kind of goes back to, like, the parent-child thing. Only because they're your parents doesn't necessarily mean that they're right 100%.
Right,
so
that's true.
That's really what I've learned out of.
Totally. I want people to go to the ballot box and read those initiatives with that analogy in mind. I got my kid's credit card here.
Yeah.
What do I want to vote on this initiative?
Exactly.
What do I want to vote on?
Right.
That's great.
Well, that wraps it up for us for this year. Until next year, January 3rd, we'll be back here at 3 o'clock on KCAA.
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, everybody.
Happy Hanukkah. Kwanzaa.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.
Your NBC Sports Radio update starts now.
A big day for Bears fans. I'm Jeff Nathanson checking the NFL Roundup. Today was the day they've been waiting for quite a while in Chicago. The Packers in town to take on the Bears. Chicago wins the game 24-17. Mitchell Trubisky had 2 touchdown passes in this one. With the victory by 7 over Green Bay, the Chicago Bears win the NFC North.
They huddle up. Trubisky takes the snap, takes a knee. They head to the field. The Bears have won it 24.